Good day and welcome to our online message for the first Sunday of the new year. My name is Deanne Carter and I serve as the pastor of Margarettsville and Lower Granville Baptist churches. Today we're looking at the story found in Matthew chapter 2, the first 12 verses, the story of the wise men. Now, Christmas is over and I'm sure most of you have your trees taken down and your decorations all put away. All the festivities surrounding the season are done, and life has returned to its normal routine. Well, to the same old mundane routine, as Renee McVicker mentioned in our sermon last week. But she also reminded us of something very important, that God breaks into the ordinary. He nudges us and he prompts us to do what we might not usually do. And then he shows up in the ordinary and makes it extraordinary. Well, the shepherds, they were just going about their nightly routine when the whole host of angels appeared and made an extraordinary announcement that would change their lives and change the world. Scripture tells us that they responded and they went immediately to see and to worship the Christ child. Now, in the Gospel of Matthew, we read about another group, a group of magi or wise men as they were known. And they were going about their everyday lives, but they were the kind of individuals who were always on the lookout for anything that was different, anything out of the ordinary. And that one night they saw a star that wasn't normally there. You see, they studied the sky and they noticed the difference. Down through time, people have tried to explain that star. Some think it was a planet. Others think it was a number of planets coming together. Some think it was a comet. But we know, don't we, that God, who created the universe with just his words, could also create a special star to nudge them along to go and to find the newborn king. There's an Old Testament prophecy called the Star Prophecy. And many believe that it's this verse that led the wise men to Jesus. It's found in Numbers 24:17. It says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. The Magi, they were no doubt aware of this prophecy, and they interpreted this star as the star. And they were compelled to follow it. God used that star to nudge them along towards Jerusalem. Like how he sometimes will bring across our pathways things or instances or situations that will help us move forward and watch out for him. Are you watching? Are you praying for God to reveal himself to you, to lead you forward in this new year? Well, the wise men, they traveled thousands of miles. It took time, and they were not actually at the manger. They came later, much later, maybe even up to 2 years later. They couldn't hop into their cars or jump onto a plane or a high-speed train. They had to mount their camels and slowly make their way through the desert in search of the King of the Jews. Now, when they got there, it seems that maybe the star had disappeared, because they go to the king and they ask for further directions. And we have that whole interchange between them and King Herod. And you'll remember, well, the king was quite disturbed with this news, and he He had to call together the people's chief priests and teachers of the law and ask them where Christ was to be born, because he didn't know the prophecy. And when he found out that it was to happen in Bethlehem, according to the prophecy, he really became disturbed, and he considered this news a threat. So he tells the Magi to go and search for the child and then come back and tell him where they found him so that he too could go and worship him. Well, you and I know that what he really wanted to do was to go and have him killed. When this conversation is done, the Magi, they went on their way. And guess what? Look at verse 9. It tells us that the star that they had seen in the east, in their own lands, was there with them once again. And now it went ahead of them and it stopped over the place where Jesus was. Verse 10, when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. They knew they were on the right track again. Sometimes you and I might feel led to do things that are out of the ordinary for us. And then after a while, we seem to lose our way. Maybe we've lost track of where God is leading, and we need to get back to God and truly seek his direction. Because it's only as we do this that we will truly find what we're really looking for. If we keep reading the story, we see verse 11. It says, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures, and they presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, Mary and Joseph and Jesus were now in a house. Time had passed. Maybe, as I've already said, maybe even up to a couple of years. But the wise men, they were faithful in their search, and now they had found the king. Have you ever wondered if they might have been disappointed to find a baby with his mother as a king? Well, Ray Pritchard says this. He says, he did not look like a king. His home did not look like a castle. He had no scepter in his hand. He commanded no armies, gave no speeches, passed no laws. He could not walk or talk. No royal decree came from his lips. There was nothing to make you think he was a king. To the outward eye, he was nothing but a peasant child born in dire poverty. But to the Magi, he was a king. He possessed more royalty in the cradle than Herod possessed in his fine palace. But it didn't seem that way. The eyes of the flesh revealed nothing but a normal baby, gurgling and cooing. But somehow, the Magi saw beyond the present into the future, and in deep faith they worshipped him. They saw that this child would one day rule the world, and they were not ashamed to fall on their knees and their faces before him. To this baby, they gave the honor due a king. You see, what Herod craved, the baby received. Now, scripture tells us that they presented gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, gifts that, unbeknownst to the Magi, were also symbolic for who the baby would become. Gold pointing to his majesty, for he was a king. Frankincense pointing to his deity, because he is God. And myrrh pointing to his humanity, because he was destined to suffer and to die. And then verse 12 gives us the conclusion of the story. It says, having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. What a journey home they must have had. Can you imagine their conversations? Well, as we've looked at this story once again today, probably for the 100th time or more, I'm not sure, I wonder if anything new stands out to you, or anything that you've heard that has reminded you of something you've heard before but maybe had put on a shelf and forgotten. I'd like to look at a couple points this morning. The first thing I'm reminded of is the wise men searched for God with purpose and diligence. Nothing got in their way, did it? Nothing took their attention from their mission to go and to worship the King. They didn't have a map with the exact coordinates. They didn't have GPS systems. They had to travel over some pretty difficult terrain. And the star seemed to disappear for a little bit. And then they had to ask others who didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And then they went to the King Herod and asked him. They had to search diligently. And it wasn't easy, I can imagine, but they didn't give up. They didn't return home. They were intent on finding him and worshiping him. Makes me wonder, how intent are we? Do we search for God with the same diligence that the wise men searched for him? Are we as committed as they were? It's easy in our daily routines, even the mundane routine, to become sidetracked from our goal of a deeper relationship with God. The urgent takes priority, doesn't it? Oh, I really need to do this, or I need to do that, or go here or there. I need to watch that show. I need to finish reading that book, or do that craft, or go and mow that lawn. And spending time with God, well, that gets put on the back burner. I'll do it later. We need to have a dedicated time in our schedules to focus on our relationship with God and not allow anything else to come and to take that time away. A second thing that stands out to me as I've read this story is that they worship God with extravagant generosity. When they found Jesus, the wise men presented him with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And this act of worship, it illustrates to us, it teaches us about the importance of giving God our very best. Not whatever we can spare, or a few minutes here and there. Could be our time, could be our talents, could be our resources. God calls us to offer him our best, the most excellent that we have to give. Remember, giving extravagantly, it means giving above what's expected, what's affordable, even what's needed. So if we take time this week and we prayerfully seek God and we consider areas where we can be more generous in our worship, I wonder what God will reveal to us, what he wants us to do, how he wants us to give. May involve sacrificial giving, volunteering our time for an important cause. Maybe it'll involve using our talents to uplift and inspire others. Whatever it is, if we respond, God will be honored and others will be blessed. And you and I, well, we know the joy that we find when we bless and serve others. The last lesson I want to highlight from this story is the need to be obedient to God's leading. Remember those nudges that Renee talked about last week? Well, the wise men, they received some nudges, didn't they? and they responded in obedience. They saw the star, and they believed that to be a sign of the birth of the King of the Jews. And they followed the star all the way to Jesus. They didn't give up. They had a dream where they were told not to go back to Herod, but to go home another way. And they listened. They were obedient to God's leading. Another example for us to be willing to follow God's guidance in our lives. To be faithful in obedience. We need to always be listening for God, don't we? Looking for Him in the ordinary. We need to be sensitive to His leading, because we never know when He wants to use us and to bless us, to bless others. As you and I, as we spend time getting to know Him in prayer and the Scriptures, we'll hear His voice more clearly. And when we need to make decisions, He'll guide us every step of the way. Well, as we've spent time today reflecting a little bit on the journey of the wise men, I pray that you have been inspired to be diligent in your search to know God, to worship Him with extravagant generosity, and also to daily respond to His divine guidance by being obedient to His leading. Let's strive to be like the wise men in 2024. And let's continue to seek the one true King, Jesus Christ. God bless each and every one of you. I look forward to walking with you through this year. And I pray that you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. God bless.